he is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does. But he comes back from every fight that he's had better, you know? I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days though.
Change, another inconsistency in Anthony Joshua. I now understand, I believe having watched this, where Jake Paul is getting his confidence from. How he's built this narrative in his head that he genuinely has a chance. I think the thing to remember here though, is that Anthony Joshua doesn't struggle against all smaller fighters.
This might be his last fight, getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out.
Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson recently broke down the upcoming Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua showdown, laying out just how different these two fighters really are. Tyson points out that Joshua needs to manage his power carefully because Jake simply isn't on his level. Rogan adds that Joshua is one of the most intimidating heavyweights in the sport, and that stepping in front of someone with that kind of force is a massive gamble for Paul, especially considering that most of Paul's past fights were exhibitions against older or retired opponents.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you can see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the greatest heavyweight.
The host of The Weight Concept explains that for Jake Paul, getting knocked out by a single clean punch from Joshua is actually safer than absorbing punishment for 8 full rounds. He breaks it down simply: repeated heavy shots can lead to long-term damage, whereas one decisive knockout, while dramatic, limits the overall harm. Even though Joshua will be using smaller 10-ounce gloves for this matchup, a quick ending is still far less dangerous than sustained blows. The host notes that these exhibition-style rules shift how people view the fight, but they don't eliminate the real danger Jake is stepping into. The smaller gloves may help the entertainment factor, but they also could increase knockout chances. At the end of the day, glove size doesn't erase the obvious differences in power, experience, or skill, meaning every punch Joshua throws carries serious weight.
But the thing is, there really is only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out, because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, you know, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here outside of, again, the bodily harm. You know, you fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but as far as your marketability, as long as you don't get permanently in.
Nakisa by Darian breaks down why Anthony Joshua was ultimately chosen as Jake Paul's opponent. Since the entire build-up and fight will be documented by Netflix, they needed a matchup that would deliver the strongest visual and storytelling impact. They looked at things like star power, public interest, and how well each fighter's profile would translate on screen. Joshua checked every box. He's a global name, a former world champion, and someone who instantly raises the stakes. Having him in the ring adds drama, credibility, and a narrative that fits perfectly with Netflix's production style, intensifying every moment leading up to fight night.
And, Jake Paul being Jake Paul, he wanted to focus on the biggest, baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I would say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight. Some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well. Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia's interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said he's a DAZN fighter, this ain't happening, and of course we know there's no bigger DAZN name than...
Ryan Garcia weighs in on what this fight could mean for Jake Paul if things go badly. He stresses that Joshua's punching power is no joke, and a loss could affect Paul far beyond the physical impact. Garcia believes a defeat could alter Paul's public image and shift the direction of his career. He highlights that this isn't just another celebrity boxing event. Joshua is a real threat with elite skills. For Jake, proper preparation and awareness are crucial, because stepping in with Joshua brings genuine consequences and could completely reshape his future in the sport.
In my opinion, I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look it, he loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he's gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Nagano. It's like. But then again, if he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out. Nobody.
Frank Martin points out that although the fight comes with huge financial rewards, it's still an incredibly difficult challenge for Jake Paul. Money doesn't erase the risks involved, and Martin believes Paul should have thought seriously about what he's signing up for. This isn't just a high-payday spectacle, the danger is very real. Joshua is a seasoned professional with years of top-level experience, something promotion and fame can't compensate for. Yes, the money is big, but the physical and reputational risks are just as significant.
I consider Jake now, I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time, he gotten better throughout all his fights, he done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for their whole life, it's a little different. If that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight, but that's a tough task for, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. I know AJ personally, so That's a tough task.
Johnny Nelson suggests that this fight could potentially mark the end of Jake Paul's in-ring career if he gets knocked out. Paul has become a major payday for established fighters like Joshua, often offering big purses to secure marquee matchups. Nelson also mentions that some people are already pushing conspiracy theories, claiming Paul might not even be able to secure similar fights after this one due to the possible physical impact or public reaction. This matchup is a major turning point for Paul, a chance to make serious money, but also a moment that could completely reshape how the boxing world views him moving forward.
For AJ, I'm stuck in between, because nobody on this green earth would actually turn down 50-60 million to fight Jake Paul. And people that don't like this will probably watch it because they want to see Jake Paul getting knocked out. So what's it say about AJ and what's it say about Jake Paul? I think I was thinking upside down. For AJ, I thought, Mama's cashing out. He's cashing out because he's going down this mimic line. But I thought, in reality, is he? Realistically, he's thinking, you know what, this big mouth YouTuber stroke boxer has the cheek to call me out. I'd be pissed off at that, if I'm honest with you. I'd be upset if I was AJ, thinking, that's disrespect, man. You think you can deal with me? But he didn't. AJ was jovial and he commended Jake Paul's business acumen, saying, we've sat down, the deal's been done. But still, it just leaves an odd taste in your mouth. So as long as AJ gets the job done, and I mean gets the job done, shows his world-class pedigree, and wipes this boy out, then everybody's happy. But how does it enhance his career? The only way it enhances his career is financially. That's it. No other way. There's no props from beating Jake Paul, apart from saying, thank God you shut him up. For Jake Paul now, I got to give this boy props, because he now has our attention and the whole world is talking about Jake Paul.
I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors, Bet Goodwin, for supporting that boxing show. Now, if you're interested in having a little flutter, or as I call it after my dad, Benji's Bets, Bet Goodwin's the place to be. Check out Bet Goodwin using the QR code on the screen.
I'm probably all right. I'm probably 90% thinking the fight's going to happen. But I'm struggling. I'm thinking, this boy can't be so stupid. But then you hear a whisper. You hear a whisper that Jake Paul himself might be cashing out. Because the big purses that he's pulling, fighting these has-beens or ex-fighters, they're dropping slowly but surely. So maybe, just maybe, this might be his last fight. Getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out. But there's always that conspiracy theory. Are there some contract agreements that can and cannot be done, which will never see the light of day, that we don't know about? Well, if you're an ex-fighter and if you like the fight game, you'll see fake. You'll know fake when you see it. So if there's any of that fakery going on with this, pulling a shot, taking it easy, giving man a bit of a breather, especially coming from AJ, I'd be disappointed, because AJ's brand alone, he doesn't need.
Anthony Joshua has also spoken about Francis Ngannou turning down a fight with Jake Paul, calling it a questionable decision. Joshua argues that fighters rarely get opportunities this financially rewarding, and passing them up is often a mistake. Chael Sonnen backs him up, saying Ngannou should have taken the fight because there was very little downside and plenty of exposure to gain. Joshua's comments highlight how important it is for fighters to recognize rare opportunities and think strategically about their career moves.
Ngannou does not take the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua takes the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua at the press conference gets asked his opinion of Francis not taking the fight against Jake Paul. And Joshua's like, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. There is no reason for him to not take this match. I cannot be and am not mad at Francis. I can't be. Like rules would preclude me from being upset with Francis. I'm not a big Francis fan. Francis fan. I'm not a Francis supporter. So I want to hurt Francis. I want to do something to hurt him. Well, his own actions took $10 million out of his bank account, of which, by the way, could use $10 million. So I can't be mad at him. If I teased him and by God, get in there and he go, oh my gosh, I heard Chael and I heard from all the Eagles and what was I thinking? And Joshua's out and this is my chance of redemption. Hey, put me in, Jake. That would then help him That would be positive for Francis. That would create envy as well as jealousy from outside observers like me. But I will tell you, trying to break down and understand how we got to this conclusion is mind-boggling. You ever met a writer? Your whole life, have you ever met a writer? Maybe went to college for it, they're a writer. Do you want to know the hardest thing in the world that person's going to have to do to make money? Find somebody to pay them.
And that's where we'll wrap things up for today's video. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll catch you in the next one.